My sister told me to apologize or leave after I questioned her parenting. "Get out of our house," Dad said. By morning, all their accounts were gone. Although it is said that blood is thicker than water, in my experience, money and manipulation proven to be more thick than both of those things. I spent 2 years living with my father, my sister Emily, and her kid Owen, who was 6 years old at the time. Not because I was having trouble making it on my own, but rather because they were having a hard time. My father was trying to get me to retire. Emily had not been employed for a number of years and Owen needed everything at the same time. More clothing, visits to the dentist, and school fees are all expenses. There are more items in that house that I paid for than I would like to confess. A modest contribution was made to cover the cost of the power. Before that, I was in charge of the Wi-Fi. The next thing I did was go grocery shopping. Then I went to the store to get school supplies. And then I found myself paying for Netflix, the water bill, and the trips to Costco. In fact, I went out and purchased a bunk bed for Owen's room. It was referred to as temporary assistance. It never came to an end. I didn't file a complaint. I concluded that it was a member of my family and that we were all going through a difficult time together. On the other hand, the record incidents occurred, the highly valued vinyl collection of Dad. Never allowing anybody to get their hands on them, he stored them away in a cupboard. On that particular day, I returned home after working a long and difficult shift. When I opened the door, I discovered records scattered all over the floor with black discs coated with neon marker. Owen was seated in the center of everything with his legs crossed and no caps on the Sharpies he was holding in both hands. Neither did I shout. I asked him in a peaceful manner who had given him the markings. He stated that Emily had and that she had instructed him to keep himself occupied while she went to the store. The living area as a whole appeared to be a studio for children to create art. After a half an hour, Emily arrived home and immediately got into a frenzy. At me, not at Owen, I say. I was told that I had no authority to be interrogating her son. He said that I had caused him to experience trauma. I was completely taken aback. Even when it came to the records, she did not express any regret. I have just started a rant about how I have always been critiquing her parenting style. During the middle of it, Dad came in and joined us. After taking a glance at the ruined documents, he turned his attention to me as if I had done it myself. Emily broke down in tears and confessed that she was responsible for Owen crying. As he stood there with his arms crossed, he informed me that I needed to submit an apology. In my mind, he was making a joke. For a moment, I waited for him to either chuckle or at the very least acknowledge how absurd it all sounded. On the contrary, he went on to assert that this was not the first time that I had exceeded my authority. Directly, I inquired as to whether or not he was serious. His statement was that I either apologized or I left in that manner. There is no debate. For 2 years, I had been providing assistance to them by paying their bills, providing them with food, canceling dates because they need transportation, and putting my own debt on hold in order to purchase items that they required. As a result of my refusal to kneel down to my sister and her child, I was now being disqualified from the event. My response was okay. On that particular evening, I packed my belongings, taking only my laptop, my documents, and a few articles of clothing with me. There was no farewell from me. There was no note left by me. By the time they awoke, I had already left the room. In the same vein, Emily's phone plan was the same. I had my name listed on the account. It's gone. This includes the Wi-Fi, Netflix, and Amazon Prime, which includes the monthly delivery service. All of the utilities that I had been paying for under my name were about to be terminated. They dissipated like vapor with all that they utilized that originated from me. I had 15 texts by the time lunchtime rolled around. Emily was angry with rage. Her phone has no data on it. Owen was unable to keep up with his cartoons. He phoned twice to inquire about the reason why the water was turned off. I received a text message from my cousin Natalie, who was perplexed since she knew that Emily had told her a peculiar version of the tale. When I stormed off in a wrath, there was something about it. I paid no attention to any of them. However, what they failed to recognize was that I was not simply departing. Rather, I was fully isolating myself from them. After a period of 3 days, Dad attempted to call once more. By that point, Emily had already left 4 voicemails, each of which contained a mixture of threats and appeals. You didn't have to be so dramatic. Owen is confused as to why you are acting in such a nasty manner. The last one is my personal favorite. You need to mature and return home. In the event that I were the child in this equation, I did not pick up the phone to talk. I was not yet prepared. Also, to tell you the truth, I had nothing else to say. However, what they had not yet recognized was the extent to which I had been involved in maintaining the operation of that residence. I did more than simply assist with the expenses. Having constructed a complete environment around them, I had done so. All of the login information for the insurance was in my possession. I was the one who paid the vehicle plates, arranged appointments, and even reordered Emily's contacts when she ran out of them she had gone through. They were not joking around when they indicated that Sarah would take care of it. They were serious. Not at all. Sarah had finished. After the week had come to a close, the first rail impact occurred. The energy payment for Dad was past due and the power was turned off within 3 days. The call came from him in a state of panic, and he did not even bother to welcome me. Just started giving a speech about being responsible for one's actions. I inquired as to whether he still wanted for me to apologize. After that, he hung up. Afterward, Emily's auto insurance policy expired. A parking lot resulted in the towing of her vehicle. I received a phone call from her weeping and yelling that I had abandoned them. The fact that they had to go home in the dark caused Owen to feel a great deal of fear. No, I did not respond to that question either. With each passing week, a new mystery was revealed. No one was there to schedule a repair for the refrigerator, which had broken down. Owen's account for school lunches ended up being empty. The functionality of Emily's phone has fully ceased due to the fact that I never boasted about it. They were unaware of the numerous things that I had quietly handled through the years. What I just did is. However, the most ironic aspect was that I had not yet paid off the debt that I had incurred by covering their life, bills for their groceries that were paid with their credit card. There was a charge for their elderly dog that was $800, and it wasn't even mine. At one point in time, I was contributing more to their lives than I was to my own through financial contributions. And now they were frantically trying to get things done. In spite of the fact that they were unwilling to acknowledge it, the home was falling apart at the seams without me. After then, the messages were delivered to the relatives. Emily, it would appear, had begun to reach out to cousins, aunts, family members, acquaintances, and anybody else who had listened to her, creating a version of the narrative in which I had walked out after a disagreement and abandoned family members when they were in need. Omitted the part where they threatened me with a death sentence because of a child of 6 years old writing on documents that cannot be replaced. I began receiving texts from individuals one by one. While some were inquisitive and others were on their side, there were a few individuals who were truly inquiring about the events that took place. During that time, I shared everything with my Aunt Linda. There was only one person I knew who would not be fooled by Emily's act, and that was her. I began the process by laying out the plan. Despite the fact that I had been providing financial assistance to them for a number of years, the expenditures continued to mount, and I was expelled for failing to apologize to a youngster who had ruined something that he had no right to touch. On the other hand, Linda did not immediately respond, but when she did, she posed a single inquiry. "Is it true that you took care of everything for them?" I emailed her screenshots, receipts, payments, texts from Emily asking for money, and even the most recent utility bill that I paid for my account. The response that she gave was 3 words. "I have faith in you." I had the impression that wasn't the end of it. What she would do next was completely unknown to me. No matter what it was, however, it was going to completely alter everything. Aunt Linda did not speak to them directly, at least not at the beginning of the conversation. That is not her kind of thing. When she moves, it's like a freight train. Although she works slowly and quietly and is really quiet, you won't even be able to see it coming until it does hit you. There was a possibility that she was simply trying to comprehend. It's possible that she would avoid becoming involved in the whole situation. Then, however, I received a text message from my cousin Allison. "Did you hear about the cruise?" she inquired. I hadn't heard about it. It would appear that our large extended family was making preparations for a summer cruise that would take place the next year, which would be a gigantic vacation lasting 7 days. The whole issue was worked out by Alaska. This was being organized by Linda. She had already begun organizing individuals into groups and giving them links to sign up for reservations. Within the family group chat that I was no longer a member of, everyone was discussing it for whatever reason. I am grateful to Emily. After she had begun her little campaign of playing the victim, she had removed me from the situation. I then spoke with Allison about the presence of Robert, Emily, and Owen in the group. The response she gave was, "Nope, they're not invited." At first, I assumed she could have meant that they hadn't quite made their reservation yet. On the other hand, Linda had made it clear to the family that some individuals would not be permitted to accompany them on the vacation this time around. During the talk, she did not mention any names, but everyone was aware of her. I was completely at a loss for words. It then became even more peculiar. Robert arrived at my door a few days later, as I had anticipated. He did not send a text message beforehand. Rather, he simply came up while clutching a 6-pack of beer as if it were going to make everything easier. He was not invited inside by me. As he stood there awkwardly in the corridor, he professed his want to have a conversation. He brought up the cruise and stated that it was a misunderstanding and that Linda was the one who was overreacting since she was very sensitive to the drama that occurred inside the family. Afterward, he made a statement that genuinely caused me to laugh out loud. "You know, if you could just clear things up with her, maybe she'd let it go. Let the situation go." I didn't have anything to say. I did nothing except gaze at him till he understood what I was trying to say. One of the things that he mumbled was that Emily had no intention of making things worse and that Owen was missing me. Mr. Robert was the one. Just 5 minutes later, he departed. After 2 days, Emily made an attempt to call. When I did not answer her call, she left a message in which she alternated between expressing her regret and accusing me of being the one who had turned the family against her. She stated that I was behaving in a manner that was atypical, as if I were the one who was shattering the family unit. I did not provide a response. I had spent years acting as their safety net, the one who had the ability to solve things, and the person on whom they relied if life became even somewhat uncomfortable. They kicked me out of the place the moment I required even a modicum of respect, and they actually believed they could get away with it. Then again, they were beginning to experience it. Now, there was more to Linda. She began communicating with other relatives in a quiet and collected manner, providing them with information. Receipts had been revealed to her. She had solved the equation. The volume of her voice was not raised. She heightened understanding. The rest of the family, on the other hand, began to move away from Robert and Emily. It wasn't simply that they were losing money today. It was happening gradually. It was a loss of faith for them. Furthermore, for individuals such as them, that was far more terrible than anything I could have ever said. The genuine blockbuster, however, was still on its way to being released. Emily and Robert were not the ones who came up with a twist. It was Uncle Joe, the one who kept to himself. He is never seen in the front of the scene, rarely engages in conversation, and never takes a stance. It had been many months since I had last heard from him when he suddenly sent me a text message that said, "Call me when you can." When I finally picked up the phone, he skipped the pleasantries and immediately asked, "Did they use your information for their tax returns?" I didn't even have to wonder about it. I was well aware of the point he was trying to make. Over the course of a few years, Emily had successfully persuaded me to grant her permission to claim some child tax credits under my name. Said that it would be beneficial for everyone in the home. Said that it was only a phase. In addition to being fatigued from working 2 jobs, I was ignorant. No, I concur. The reunion took place. I was never able to see the money, and they continued to beg for further assistance, as if nothing had changed. Joe shared with me that a friend of his who works in the field of IRS compliance had brought to my attention several odd files that were associated with Emily and Robert. My name was linked to benefits for which I did not qualify, and I was dependent on the wrong thing. He wasn't trying to frighten me by warning me. According to what he informed me, he was already working to cleanse my reputation from the turmoil. Then, however, he added something that I had not anticipated. Sarah, they were aware of what they were acting upon. Those words stayed with me. Later in the week, Linda was the host of the family cruise planning event that took place at her residence. It was open to everyone with the exception of Owen, Emily, and Robert. However, they did not fail to show up at any point. That night, Allison texted me in all capital letters to fill me in on everything. Emily entered the room just as if nothing had occurred. I accused her of turning the entire family against her and began yelling about how she was excluded from the group. Behind her, Robert remained silent, but it was obvious that he was allowing her to take the initiative. Emily argued that it was inappropriate to penalize Owen for his adult-level drama. I did not hear Linda shout. It was simply one question that she asked. Are you able to reimburse Sarah for everything that she has paid for over the past 2 years? The room fell into complete silence. Emily made an attempt to dissuade. There was a mumbling statement made by Robert that it was not about money. When Joe finally got up for the first time in years, he placed a little stack of printed statements on the table. This was the moment when Joe stood up. In my name, I pay for everything from the utilities to the food to the phone bills to the subscriptions. Not much was spoken by him. He did not have to do it. Linda turned to them and informed them that they had not been invited to the event. Certainly not because of me, but rather because they took advantage of me, lied about it, and then attempted to portray me as the antagonist. She made it quite clear to them that they would not be in her company on the trip or at her house until they made up for what they had stolen and paid back what they had taken. It was Emily who began to shout. Robert simply made a turn and departed. However, nobody followed them. The next evening, I was inundated with messages once more. There was a pattern of Emily going between apologizing and accusing. Robert's request to speak as well as Owen's brief voicemail in which he expressed his want to speak with me. I chose not to respond. Despite the fact that they believed that the worst thing I could do was to leave, the worst thing I did was to cease coming back. They did not speak for a few days following the disastrous cruise meeting that they had attended. Although I didn't think there was much more to say, I was aware that it wasn't ended yet. I also received a text message from Robert. I realized that they still didn't grasp it when they said, "Whatever grudge you're holding, it's gone too far." That was the moment I finally understood. Despite everything that had happened, including exploiting me, lying to everyone, and attempting to disgrace me after everything went apart, they continued to believe that they were entitled to anything. For the first time in several weeks, I wrote back. Just one word, farewell from me. After that, I blocked both of them. On the next morning, I received a notice from Venmo. Emily attempted to mail me $40. Almost laughed out loud. Perhaps it was some kind of weird peace gift, or perhaps she was keeping her fingers crossed that it might spark a discussion. In either case, I did not accept it. Their money was not necessary for me. I did not do it. I only desired to rediscover my life. And at this point, I had it. To my surprise, I awoke on the morning of the trip to a level of stillness that I hadn't experienced in many years. No pounding on the door. There are no drawings of Owen that are playing off the walls. There was no Emily yelling throughout the house. Only the faint humming of my phone can be heard on the nightstand. There is a new email. The subject line is congrats. It was not opened by me. I took my time and packed my luggage, taking pleasure in the silence. My flight to the port city was scheduled to depart at 10:40 in the morning. After arriving at the airport, Allison had already sent me a text message, including a selfie and a mimosa. Her message read, "Vacation begins right now." Everything had been orchestrated by Linda. This includes flights, transportation, and even luggage tags that match. Whenever I closed my luggage with the zipper, I experienced a strange sense of serenity, like if something was being shut behind me. After I had finished getting ready to leave the house, I heard a knock at the door. A couple of gentle taps, as if someone was hesitant whether or not they wanted to be there. It was not opened by me. I was already aware of that. Once more, my phone is buzzing. A number chosen at random. Robert and Emily were standing on the porch when I looked out the window of the upper floor and heard them say, "We're outside. Please talk to us." Just 5 minutes. There was Owen kicking his legs while he was seated in the back seat of the automobile. Over the course of a few moments, I stood there and simply observed them occupying the area that had previously been mine. After that, I looked aside. I arrived to the terminal, but by the time I got there, everything had changed. There was laughter, sunlight, and steel drums playing in the distance over the speakers. I was surprised when Allison came up to me and gave me a hug as if we had just seen each other a few weeks earlier. Linda gave me a booklet that had my itinerary as well as a glossy cruise badge that had my name emblazoned across it in a clear and legible manner. During the time that we were boarding the plane, someone remarked that Emily had been phoning other members of her family once again in an attempt to guilt her way into pity. She gave a wink and added, "You made the right call." She added that she was heartbroken about the vacation and that she felt it was unjust that a youngster had to pay the price for a quarrel that occurred inside the family. On the other hand, nobody grabbed the bait this time. Even her cousins, who had previously been her supporters, had stopped doing so. Linda had previously disclosed the facts to everyone in a discreet manner. It's simply the facts, no drama. To add insult to injury, Emily was unable to spin her way out of the devastation that the facts caused. A few hours later in the afternoon, we departed from the dock. Taking pictures and pointing to the wide lake, everyone leaned over the railing and took pictures. While I saw the beach fade, I took a few steps back and held a drink in my hand. I thought about everything that I had done for them, both financially and emotionally. And I thought about how they didn't understand until it was too late that I was the one who was holding everything afloat. The farewell text was not sent by me. They were not unblocked by me. There was no email that I opened. All I did was allow the distance to widen. Within the confines of that same old house, they were seated somewhere back at home. They told themselves that I would ultimately come around, but there was no electricity, no Wi-Fi, and no help. On the other hand, I wouldn't. A cruise was more than simply a vacation for me. This demonstrated that I was able to survive without them, and that they were unable to operate well without me. And as the ship continued to sail further away, I finally let out a breath. It wasn't because I had one. Rather, it was because I was free.